Today on Creative Space, I have from Barbados Delvin Howell, who is a writer of comics and a publisher of comics as well, his own comics and comics by other writers and artists. So I'm really excited to talk to him because this is one of those underexplored regions in Caribbean art and publishing, and I'm hoping to learn some things from him and also, just introduce some of my audience to the work that he's doing. Welcome, Delvin. Happy to have you here. Thanks for making the
Hi,
time.
thanks for having me.
So, you are in the comic realm. First of all, tell me, how did you end up as someone from Barbados, where it's not, we don't have a big comic book publishing industry in the Caribbean. How did you end up in that field?
Well, basically it started, I wasn't always a fan of comic books. I was always a fan of like film and animation. But
Mm,
what happened was we used to make comic books as placeholders when I was a child. So me and my best friend, we collaborated on stories, just mimicking what we saw on television, and decided,
mm,
okay, we'll just put it in a comic book form because we don't have the means to make. This is like the 90s, early 2000s, so we don't really have the means to film and do cartoons ourselves here. So we just did them as comic books. But then, we did that throughout primary school and early secondary school. And what happened was you're at CXC age and you're realizing that you're gonna take certain career paths, right? And around that time, me and my friend, we would have he put me on to Japanese comics at the time. And I was not a fan of comic books at the time. I was like, oh, this is in black and white. I'm not really a fan of this. But he insisted I read it. And it floored me, right? I remember being amazed by what sequential art could do. And I even compared it to a TV show that was airing at the time. And when that happened, uh, I basically went from not liking comic books to reading a comic that's like 300 chapters long in like 3 days, right?
wow.
So it really showed
Mm,
me what that could do. So around that time, he introduced me to a colleague of his, Matthew Clark, who is one of our co-founders at Beyond, who was also doing comics as well, but at the level or close to the level that of what I just saw, what I read overseas. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, well, comics are possible. I can start tailoring a lot of my stories towards comic books. And what happened? A lot of like-minded individuals came together who were also doing comics or doing original stories around that time. The same Matthew Clark for his project, he did a school project at college where it was like an anthology called Mass Anthology, where multiple different creators would sit down and do like a one shot, like 10 pages or so, to put in the anthology magazine. And at the time, I was working on my series Offset, which I decided to come up to work on during college. And I wrote the manuscript for that. That's kind of how I'm in prose. It's my understanding that you have the novel version for that uh, through through the contest. But when I wrote the prose version of that, uh, Matthew had approached me to say, well, he wants to adapt it into a comic, and I was like, yeah, I actually would like to do that because we've been talking back and forth during that time.
mm,
So he did
mm,
like a one shot for the anthology of a portion or a fight scene from the book, and that was the first time seeing my characters illustrated, and I felt really illustrated on that level, and that it was like a clicking moment for me. So that was really good, and it really got popular from there. A lot of people started to like it locally, and they wanted to see the next one. So I kind of linked up with another co-founder, Tristan Roach, who decided to work on the second one shot for Offset for Master Anthology because Matthew was a bit busy at the time. And then
mm,
what happened was we kind of kept ties together. That event kind of made us keep ties together, keep contact. And
mm.
basically, when like everyone was finished with school and fresh out of college, we decided to pool our resources and to come under one banner for an event called AnimeCon. It was a convention at the time that all of us wanted to have a presence at. And we figured it made sense to come under one banner and get more of a presence that way as opposed to just having our own individual spread out books. So all of us came under one banner, pooled our resources, and started releasing titles on the Beyond Publishing Caribbean. So we've been doing that for over 10 years at this point. Uh, right now we have, I'd say, 10 titles across multiple genres. So fantasy, science fiction, adventure, horror, thrillers, crime drama. Right now, recently we were releasing a psychological thriller with the New Loose Change project. I myself, I've released Offset as two manuscripts with prose. I've just seen two manuscripts with prose. It has visuals or illustrations inside because at the time of releasing the novel, I did not want to alienate the comic book readers because at the time we were releasing, I was releasing Offset through Beyond Publishing as a comic book. So people were kind of familiar with it as a comic, but the prose book was always there. It was always like the first version of it. So when I fine tuned the book and got the resources and everything, I released that and I decided to put illustrations to connect it back to the comic. So we had that going on, which kind of works out well because I love prose and I love comic books, commercial art. So that kind of worked together. So far I've had two prose novels and four comic book issues. It is my plan to adapt the entire Offset series into a comic book. I usually tell readers that if you read the novels first, you're gonna have a massive head start over the people who read the comics because you get more of the story one time. So that's kind of what I've been working on personally. I'm currently working on the third prose novel, and we also, me and Tristan, we are working or due to release a new project called Loose Change, which I mentioned earlier, which is a comic book series to encourage financial literacy in readers young and old. So we got funded by UNESCO Caribbean through their Creative Caribbean grant project. So
Mhm.
we're very excited about that one. But aside from that, we've had success. We've won multiple Addy Awards.
I
We've
saw
collaborated.
that. I
Yeah.
saw that you won in what, 2021 and 2023?
Yeah, 21, 21, 2023. I think even before that, too, I think 26, 2015, I think we won some as well. Because
Okay.
aside from Offset and I think Hard Ears, which is one of our titles, won a couple illustrations, a couple Addies. Life and Death in Paradise won a couple Addies. Our Crossroads series, which is a collaboration with the US Embassy, we won a couple Addies for that, including the Angel Award for social outreach projects. And I think Spirit Beer also won an award for that. So we kind of made a lot of strides across the board and we've started to penetrate overseas. But I think with this new project that's coming out, we're looking to expand even further because it has so much other avenues that we can go to. So yeah.
So with the Addies, because I know the Addies are for advertising. So I
Mhm.
was a little bit surprised when I saw that you had won in that realm. But from what I'm getting from what you're saying is that in addition to existing as creative entities, the stories and the characters you create, you also repurpose them for messaging, like you said, with the financial literacy element, so that they kind of cross over into other areas like advertising. Is that
Yeah,
fair to say?
with the Addy Awards we won for illustration and book design, they can have a category for that. A lot of our goal with Beyond Publishing is to develop powerful IPs and stories that stick inside your mind. And we are very focused on having a very high quality product, not just in terms of the stories that we tell or the artwork, but the actual book itself. It's very like international level, international standard. We try to
It
aim for
is.
that.
It
And
is.
I think as a result, we kind of got recognition for that. But we kind of want that when people see it, they don't think, oh, it's a Caribbean book. You want it to stand out. And it kind of works against us sometimes because people pass it and think, oh, is a book for overseas, but they don't realize that it's us that making it. But
Okay, but here what? But here what? I think it is a very Caribbean book. I mean, you're using not Caribbean as in the quality is international, but Caribbean can be Caribbean products can have international quality, and you're proving that. Like
exactly,
that's not we're not the opposite of quality. You are
exactly.
quality, you are Caribbean. And one of the things that I like, beginning with the Offset series, but I was most recently reading I forget the banner title of the series, but it's a very sexy, very violent, very stylistic, very Afrofuturist series that I'm reading now. The character at the end returns to Barbados. She's a pilot.
Oh, you mean Dairy the Stray Dogs?
Yes, yeah. So I'm reading. I've just finished reading the first one in that,
Yeah.
and very, very impressive. And like, I made a note because I always blog about the things that I read. And I'm like, I want to read more. I want to read more of this. I'm hooked by the story. The visuals are amazing.
Mm.
And obviously, it's adult content. As I said, it's a lot of violence, a lot of sex, but not but, and it's a very interesting story,
Yeah.
right? So, but I haven't read Offset series yet. That book is incoming. The novelization is incoming, but
Mm.
I've been going through the characters,
Mm.
and like, okay, so you mentioned cons. One of the things, I don't know how you feel about this, but one of the things that I would like to see with more Caribbean cons is more Caribbean characters. Like I find that a lot of the cons, I mean, and it's the one we have in Antigua and the pictures I've seen from around the region, is that we still tend to do like, anime characters and so on that we're
Yeah.
more familiar with. And so I'm looking at your character list. Like I was going through your Instagram, looking through the character list. I'm like, I know that woman. I know that folklore. It's like Bayesian folklore, but not your grandmother's Bayesian folklore, if that makes sense. Like it's very futurist, and it's like talk me through it. Talk me how you've reimagined these characters, and if you have, I would like to see your characters at these Caribbean cons because they are just as impressive and just as imaginative as the
Yeah,
international
so
one.
oddly enough, and I probably got to see some pictures, but we've had people cosplay our characters before.
Mm.
I think what we bring to the table in terms of our stories is that we kind of break tradition. Um, Whether intentionally or unintentionally, we try to add something different to how our folklore and our culture is reimagined. Recently at CarFest, I had a workshop about preserving our culture by reframing the stories we tell, which is,
Mhm.
people think oh, that's because you got artwork, that's just enough. We say, no, it goes down because I managed to achieve this with this prose. So it's not just with artwork. But what you can do is you leverage the artwork or leverage the storytelling to reframe how you tell the stories, and don't be too enamored with regards to how the Caribbean is. Like people will look at me and say, well, your work is very Japanese influence. And I say, well, you can see that, but you can't read my story and say that, oh, it's not Caribbean, right? It's just
100%.
very familiar. So
Yeah.
say for example with Offset.
When they say when they say Japanese, do they mean the text or are they talking about the images? Because I didn't get a sense.
They in terms of like some people say it's very reminiscent of like it's a thing called Battle manga for Offset. There's a thing called Battle Comics. So things like Naruto, Bleach, Dragon Ball, those sort of things where there's a lot of focus on the fights and the battles and the
Okay.
confrontations, right?
Okay, but you
And
make it
people,
Caribbean though.
hmm?
But I'm saying, but you make it very Caribbean though. I mean, the one that always
Yeah,
walks about with the cane, the cutlass. The cutlass one made me giggle because it's like
yeah,
this is Caribbean. This is how one. It's not just the imagery, but it's also our language, how we refer to these things.
yes.
So, yeah,
Yeah, so
go ahead.
a lot of stuff that's out there now, and not just outside of what we are doing, they do have stuff that still retain the Japanese influence, and I tend to like to move away from that. Like with Offset, for example, Offset basically is a urban fantasy story that follows a young sticklicker who discovers an underground opiate trade in an alternate version of Barbados, right? And one of my goals was I wanted to reframe the sticklicker with the same gravitas that people would look at the samurai, you know? When I
Mm.
made Offset, people was
Stick liquor,
obsessed with samurai.
stick liquor for anyone who is not Caribbean, like a stick fighting. So that's his weapon. He fights with a
Yeah.
stick, and it's a Caribbean tradition.
Yeah, it's Caribbean tradition. It's actually like a legitimate martial arts. Like, and a
Hmm.
lot of people that I've been consulting that would tell you that stick liquor has advanced to the point where they have multiple forms, multiple expressions of it, and it's even seen to be deadly in some circles, right?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
I wanted to frame the stick liquor through Kyle, Harding, and multiple other characters in the series as something that has the same weight narratively as a samurai would in many Japanese titles, as a ninja would, right? As the Viking would or the Spartan, any of those other characters that you see
Mhm.
there, I wanted the stick liquor to have that same sort of gravitas. And I kind of move along that side with Collins, with the Cutlass. If you're Beijing, people kind of get that juxtaposition because we call a Cutlass a Collins. So it's all you need Collins and got Collins. It's like, yeah, that's kind of the joke. And when it came over Offset was conceived when it was at school, right? And it started
Mhm.
off as a joke. It was very comedic. Most of our Caribbean folklore has a very comical, whimsical edge to it. And
Mm-hmm.
when they did it, it was like, yeah, I think when they made the first three characters, which is Kyle Collins and Sniper, the guy that fights the bottles, it was
Oh,
very, it
that
was very
one.
like, yeah, it's very comedic, Skylarking, But then what happened is that the story, it kept in my mind, and it really was like, why does it have to be a joke? Why can't I just tell a story that has our culture and folklore? I have it with the same seriousness as a Naruto or Lord of the Rings or Star Wars. Why do I have to have it as a caricature? So I kind of developed the story along that line and made things a little bit darker, a little bit more gritty, and it evolved to kind of like cross a lot of these genres of fantasy, horror, crime drama, all that stuff. And I tell people that if you look at Offset, a lot of the themes in Offset, it has a darker edge to it. Like I
Mm-hmm.
reimagine the Shaggy Bear and the Mocha John B and the Heartman. Well, obviously Heartman is kind of terrifying. He's a murderer, a serial killer,
Mm-hmm.
but you have all these different Caribbean caricatures, the Baku, all these Steel Donkey. I reimagine them as very terrifying things, right?
Yeah.
And that's by design. I
And they
want
are
people,
terrifying in their own right.
yeah,
But
I want it to be like have a darker edge to it. Because when you think of a Shaggy Bear, you don't think of a Shaggy Bear as something that's intimidating, right?
yeah.
But in the Offset series, I kind of have it as, you know, as something that is supposed to be threatening. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not just something that we do, because I kind of noticed this, that with us at Beyond, we're all influenced by the same things, at least on a basic level, right? We all have these Caribbean folklore or Caribbean influence because
We,
we grew
we
around
sometimes
that.
have different names, but when you describe it or the effect, you realize, oh, our version of this is this. Like you might call
Yeah.
it that over there, you call it that over there. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So what happened was, like, even though we have the same like foundation in terms of Caribbean culture, the expression of how we see these characters is very influenced by what we like, right?
Yeah.
So like
Mm-hmm.
Beyond, we have like three versions of the Heartman, right? We got three versions
Mm-hmm.
of the Shaggy Bear. We got multiple versions of Madasali and Steel Donkey, like all these kind of, even multiple versions of the Heartman. And
Yeah.
again, it kind of shows like you can take the same foundation and just really twist how we see the culture, because we're not
Yeah.
beholden to a traditional way of seeing things, and we have a certain design philosophy where we say, all right, we have the basic like nuts and bolts of what this folklore influence is, but then we
Mm-hmm.
twist it to the story that we're trying to tell. What offset is crime drama, fantasy, action, horror. Those are the four.
I have to say that some looking through those images that I wish like there's something that sings to several parts of me. It sings to my blackness, it sings to
Mhm.
my Caribbeanness, because as much as we've been fans of the genre, whether it's anime or manga or comics or graphic novels, we don't often see ourselves, whether as Black people or as Caribbean people. And this is like a buffet of all of the stories that we grew up on, but reimagined in this sort of very postmodernist sort of way. And I would say Afrofuturist because it very much draws on our African heritage as well. I don't know if you agree with that, but I feel all of that when I look through, and I look forward to reading more of your work. But I feel all that just with the limited interaction I've had with it. And I feel like, in a sense, maybe you don't think of your work in that way, but in a sense, that's breaking a boundary. It's revolutionary in a way. Do you see your work in that way?
Yes. So I know, like, personally, I have a memory of, I don't know if you follow Dragon Ball, but I have a memory where there's a character that was very popular at the time who had long, I would say, 2C hair that was purple and muscles and had a very pretty Caucasian type face. I remember lamenting briefly that I didn't have those features. And at the time, this character, this is like at the height of Dragon Ball. So this character is called Trunks, in case anybody's watching those. Every kid, every boy wanted to be Trunks, and every girl wanted to have Trunks as their boyfriend. And I felt like a tangible, like, dang, I kind of feel sorry I don't look like that. And then I started looking around and see, wait, no, I am a Black person. We don't have spiky hair, but we have cool hair. We have dreadlocks, we have plait hair, we have afros. Our features are kind of like, we have big eyes. We have features that are very striking, that look really cool illustrated. And I was like, well, shoot, we should do more of that. Like I can't draw, so like I was able to draw it myself, but I was able to think, okay, if I'm doing characters, I want to make us look cool because we don't see that at all in any of the media at the time. We're seeing more of it now. Times have
Mhm.
kind of changed to see more of it now. We say Afrofuturism, no Black Panthers, no being out for a couple of years now. Into the Spider Verse, all these different series have been out, but at the time there wasn't anything like that at all in media. And I was like, look, if we're doing this, like a lot of us had stories that weren't originally Caribbean leaning, but when we started, we were like, look, if we got one shot doing this, we got to do home first, right? We got to do home. So, because if I do a story, I was like, it has to be a Caribbean based story. And thankfully, I've been fortunate to get a lot of offset out, but I've also been managed to, I got a chance to do Loose Change, which is our new upcoming project. And Loose Change, even as a financial literacy book, we we take the chance to do this with the same sort of appeal as our normal titles, right? A lot of our work has like a lot of gravitas to it. It has like a lot of style to it, and you're supposed to read it like an actual, like if you're reading like an actual piece of entertainment, right?
Mhm.
And with that philosophy in mind, it kind of gives us a lot more room creatively by understanding the rules and being able to bend that and apply it to our culture. Like even with
Yeah.
Loose Change isn't necessarily a Caribbean folklore story, but it is, mystically Caribbean, right? The main character, I was saying, that is Desmond Hold It. He's designed off of King Dial. You know King Dial is, right? You're probably familiar with King Dial. Um,
No,
for
no.
information, he used to be at cricket matches. He used to be dressed in these business suits and very like regal bearing and very colorful suits, like bow tie and
Okay.
stuff during cricket
Okay.
matches. And he's
Mhm.
a Caribbean caricature, right? A Caribbean character that was pretty popular at the time. Like anybody who used to watch cricket back in the 70s to, I would say, what, 2000s, you would know King Del is from seeing him. So I wanted to introduce that character and reference him in Loose
That,
Change.
that's where you went wrong. I don't watch cricket, so
Huh?
I said that's where you went wrong. I don't watch cricket.
Oh, yeah, yeah. But yeah, like stuff like that. We have reference to like a snow cone vendor in Loose Change.
So
Um, I think one of the characters, like I do things where we use the iconography like the yard fowl and
okay.
things like the snake and stuff like you see in the Caribbean and present it in a certain expressive way. All these are not the Caribbean culture. Like I think
Yeah.
Caribbean folklore is the first layer, and of course it's a very important layer. But there are multiple other ways that we can sit down and express ourselves, right? And I think that is kind of what we use the mediums to do, right?
Yeah.
I'm not steadfast to this idea that fantasy, for example, is supposed to have elves and giants and mages and orcs. No, I'm not. I'm not steadfast to that idea. I like the way Japanese are able to weave their culture into their stories and bend the rules. I basically
That,
we basically do
that's
the
the
same
thing.
thing for Caribbean.
That's the thing, isn't it? I mean, fantasy. The rules of fantasy and they have to be elves, they have to be orcs, they have to be. That was them working with their culture and their folklore.
Yes,
Right? And so that the same idea anywhere in the world, you work with what is sort of intrinsic to your culture, and it's just that became the idea of fantasy became very westernized, and it has to be this thing, but it's
exactly.
not. Um, what would you say to someone who hearing you wants aspires because you were with college kids with your friends and so on, you did this together, the how of it,
Mm,
the how to step into this space and create something that can be viable as a product and as a
mm.
business. How did you navigate that, and what advice would you give someone?
Well, I would say to get started, I think from over the years, there have people who have had aspirations of doing this work. I've had people who actually sat down and started doing the work when we started. But life happens, things become a little, we don't have we didn't have an industry at the time when we started. And it's a situation where people feel a lot of pressure to do things and they think that they're wasting their time. I would say
Mhm.
to stick with it, trust your instincts and your gut. With regards to prose, especially, um, I think prose, from as a writer, we have this specific way of believing that prose should be, and I think it's very limiting. I think
Mhm.
if you expand your horizons in storytelling, it allows you to bend the rules a lot more. Because the people, and I don't want to blame the education system or the people I taught, but it's a very traditional thing that people are like, we have to do stories this way. We have to talk this way. You know what I mean? And I'm like, no, like you don't, there's no rules to it, right? Once you understand that your aim is to make the audience feel something and to have emotion, you can
Mhm.
then work in that direction and get that done. You know what I mean? So I would
Yeah.
say trust your instincts, get started, even if it's small. Like, for example, I can't draw yet, right? I can't draw comics, but I tell people if you want to be a writer, I would say start with stickman, right? Start with stickman, draft thumbnails, you call them thumbnails for a page using stickman, right?
Mhm.
And start to lay out the story using stickman as a comic book. That's the
Okay.
best part. If you do that, right? And I wish the wife should show you an example of that is, but if you do that, that would allow you to sit down and say, all right, this is what the story will look like as a comic book. You think about things like page design. You think about things like scene structure, the flow of the page, the flow of the story, if it makes sense, and then you'll be able to build with that. You get what I'm saying? Most people have like characters written down and have like they have a story idea, have characters designed, or at least a character in their head. I'd say write that down. Don't let that go and build upon it. And don't be
Mhm.
afraid to look ridiculous.
Mhm.
A lot of my stories, like on paper, they seem very crazy, right? Like you have a guy that fights with a palm leaf. Like you got a guy that throws balls. You got random. Like on paper, it seems very random, but it's like no, there's no rules. Like there's nothing. Like people are they're so hesitant to try those big ideas out before
Mhm.
actually having a bit of confidence and saying, well, this is what it is, and sticking
Mhm.
to that, right? Don't be so beholden to this idea that it has to be done a certain way because it
Yeah.
really doesn't, right?
Yeah.
I'd say if you're a creator, uh, I would say expand your palette. Also, people tend to consume what they like to make, right? Or what they like to read. So they say, okay, I like sci-fi, so I'm just gonna read sci-fi, right?
Mhm.
Or I like fantasy, I'm just gonna read fantasy. And what that kind of does is that it kind of pigeonholes your perspective on storytelling because you're really
Mhm.
sticking to what you like, right?
Yeah.
When I originally started, it was admittedly very influenced by Japanese stuff, right? But since then, I've expanded my horizons, especially with prose. I read all sorts of genres that I wouldn't even. I was not a horror fan at first. I was like, you know what? My stuff have a horror element. Let me consume horror. Let me try horror for
Mhm.
different cultures, right? Let me see how it is in a book. Let me see how it is in a comic, right? Same to with like thrillers and crime drama and romance. Like sit down and find out how these things work, how these genres work, and then like apply that to your own stuff, right? I
Yeah.
would say some groundwork when it comes to researching how the story is executed. I mean, there are a lot of textbooks that are there right now to tell you what a good story is,
Mhm.
and I would say some actual tangible takeaways when it comes to books. Um, I'd say if you're a writer, try to find an artist to work with, and also don't be afraid to not just collaborate with the artists, communicate with the artists, pay the artists. Some people
Mhm.
are like they're not willing to pay artists, or they say, well, you can have part ownership, but you have to understand, especially for comics. Comics is a very lonesome, solitary profession, right? A
Mhm.
lot of time, at some point, the person is going to be in a room working on that particular project by himself, maybe
Mhm.
communicate to the his other partners, but mostly by himself. And I think
Mhm.
being able to compensate the person while they're working on that for their time is a good incentive to get things made.
Yeah.
It's something as simple as that. People don't think that, oh, you just work on something and you get a collaboration with royalties. And they say, well, you might do that, but I say in turn, the person has to eat while working on their stuff. And these things can work to take months to come out. You know what I mean? So I'd say like, save us some money, budget for that, treat it like an actual project. We tend to treat our comics like if we treat movies, we treat like we have budgets and stuff set for that stuff. That's one tangible thing I do. I say do the same
Okay.
for books as well. Sit
Mhm.
down, put some actual tangible work into designing the book. Like editing, you gotta pay an editor sometimes. You gotta pay an illustrator for a cover. Try not to take shortcuts. I know people are in this whole like AI craze and they say, "Oh, let me just get AI to do it." But really and truly, I think a testament to the work we've done so far is that we don't really take shortcuts. We tend to to move. We move smart, but we still move in an actual official sort of way because it kind of gives us a lot more room and in terms to explore new things. I personally like working with other artists because other artists are able to give me something, a different viewpoint that I would not
Mm-hmm.
normally have myself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if I had time, I'll give examples, but I know Tristan himself, we've collaborated a lot on multiple different projects. And I
Mm-hmm.
find that every time Tristan himself grows as an artist, he adds something to the project that we work on together,
Yeah.
which is a benefit to working with another human being. So stuff like that, I would say, would really get into books. I'd say too that in terms of distribution, there are multiple avenues to get distribution. We always tell people that Amazon, as much as it's demonized, it's allowed us to release stuff. I
Yeah.
remember a time where if I had to publish a book, I had to literally try to get an agent and pray to the heavens that somebody would pick me up just to get the book into somebody's face. Or even when you were able to do it yourself, you'd have to pay somebody a small fortune to do a small print run and then having to
Mm-hmm.
sell the book to recoup your expenses. Now we have so many different services, even through Amazon, right?
Yeah.
Allows you to get the work out there, right?
Yeah.
I'd say to use those avenues. I think those are godsends. As much as
Mm-hmm.
people don't like Jeff Bezos or whatnot, I think he has changed the industry and forced it to change. But
Mm-hmm.
also understand that even though it's easy to do and it's more available to you, takes an effort and making sure that everything's at a high quality. Respect the audience. People are, like you said, they're devoting their time and money and attention to your work, and we tend to respect the audience and making sure that when they tune in is worth their time. You know what I mean? That's kind of a
Yeah.
philosophy.
Okay, so one last thing. Are there plans to bring the characters to other media like film?
Yeah, I think we've been approached to do film adaptation at some point. I think Tristan Roach as well. He has a background in animation, so he's our co-founder. He has a background in animation, so there has been talks to see this as an animated series one day. I think the way we kind of approach it is we try to conquer the medium first. So if you do a book, I want it to be a good book. If it's a comic, I want it to be a good comic. And what I wanted is that yes, other mediums are possible, but it's not like a proof of concept, right? It's not like, oh, we're just doing this as a proof of concept. We want you to say that we're gonna give you a cinematic experience leveraging the mediums that we have, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if the
Mm-hmm.
stars align and we happen to get access to do a film or animation or a game or what have you, then we will look at the mediums and find a way to translate that to other mediums. Because each medium has different strengths and weaknesses, and we
Mm-hmm.
think very seriously about what that medium is and how it tailors to our story. I have the
Yeah,
unique
you got to crawl before you can walk. You're perfecting what you're doing so that you can take it to the next level.
Exactly. And I think
Exactly.
I have the unique position because Offset in particular is a novel and a comic. I kind of understand the strengths and weaknesses of each medium. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
okay, if it's gonna be a book, I'm gonna make it to be a good book. I'm gonna try really
Yeah,
hard to stand up to the literary giants that are out there. And if it's a
yeah.
comic, I'm gonna try to make it like an actual good comic that stands up to the comic giants out there. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how we our philosophy for doing things.
Well, I can say just from what I've seen, I feel like it is. I know that you sound like a perfectionist, so you want it to be even better, but it's pretty damn good as it is already.
Yeah.
I am really impressed with what I've seen, and I really
Thank you.
appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and whoever's listening about some of it. I will keep plugged in. I hope more people check out the work because more people dress up as your characters. Your characters are amazing. We need to see more of that. So, continued success to you. Thanks for taking the time today.
Thank you. Can I say one more last thing? I just want people
Sure.
to understand that our culture, our Caribbean culture, is some of the best in the world. Do not let
Mm,
anyone think that our culture is lame. I know, like, I didn't really get into it, but I do think that we are in a cultural war and we have all these different influences when it comes to Western culture, Japanese, Chinese, what have you, that's given to us via mediums overseas. And one of our missions, I know my personal mission, is to thwart that and to look at our Caribbean culture as something just as cool, or in some regards, even cooler than what is being seen, what we get to see. Because I don't want our generation that's under us to sit down and say, well, there's nothing cool about the Caribbean culture. No, no, no. I want you to look at all of our facets and all of our avenues with the same level of for lack of a better term, badassery, as you will see from any of the other cultures. And that's kind of our aim. And I think as creators and fans, you should just open up the possibility that our culture is just as cool. And I'm hoping
Well
that our
said.
people do that.
Well said. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, and I appreciate
Family.
you. Do the work. Thank you.